Bases dropped on the Power Hour on a Saturday morning. Lots of stuff to jump into. We got MLS from last night. We got MLS all day today. We've got MLS tomorrow. We've got Premier League. We've got La Liga. We've got Bundesliga. We've got Bayern Munich still scored another goal just a few minutes ago. All kinds of things to jump into. So you guys have questions, throw them into the Twitter timeline at Soccer Down Here. Throw them into the Twitch pitch. And you can send us an email, too, if you want to, soccerdownhere@gmail.com. John, you said you had things you wanted to start with? Start us off.
Basically, my lone question, since I did not catch the run-up last night, I don't know if it was addressed, but Jair Marufo is center ref tonight, yes?
Yes.
What is the lowdown on Jair Marufo, and stylistically, what should folks expect?
You should know this, right? We've had him many times.
Yeah, but I'm just recapping.
Well, what do you think it is? I'm testing you early on a Saturday morning.
You are testing me early on a Saturday morning. I've just thought that Marufo lets things breathe.
Explain.
All right, so who was it? Was it Dr. Joe when it came to the rule book the one time?
No, it was Mark Geiger's the one you're thinking of.
Okay, well, so Geiger said on the rule book, and he held up the rule book, and he for those watching on Twitch, and I know this is a poor visual for those who are listening to the show, he holds out the rule book, and then he says, this is the rule book, but you see how the book is flexible. It bends. So that's how I've always thought of Jair Marufo. He's a guy that lets the game breathe. The rule book is not this set, static book that you can crumple and that is rigid. The game breathes with him. So that's my impression of Jair Marufo as I drop everything now.
How does that play out in your mind? What does that mean from a realistic standpoint in this match?
Well, that means to me that Inter Miami is going to continue to foul and disrupt and cause things to stop, and it will be stop and starty. And I think it's going to be a test for his flexibility of the rule book and how much of a handle he wants on things.
I don't understand what you're thinking, to be honest. Do you think he's going to call a lot of fouls or not? Because you said stop starty. That would lead to a lot of whistles.
Well, yeah, that would lead to a lot of whistles. When do those whistles turn into persistent infringements?
This is where I've got to disagree with you. Okay. 150 million%. Because what you're doing is you are combining two things that are not combined. Calling a lot of fouls doesn't mean you're going to throw a lot of cards. Not calling a lot of fouls doesn't mean that you are not going to throw a lot of cards. Jair Marufo is maybe the best referee in the United States right now. Now, he doesn't call a lot of fouls. That doesn't mean he's not going to card things. I've never really had an issue with Jair Marufo's carding in a match. Honestly, I don't have an issue with Jair Marufo at all. He calls the game the way I would prefer it to be called, without a lot of intrusions. That doesn't mean he doesn't give cards when they're warranted. This is something we have to make really clear, is that just because you call a lot of fouls doesn't mean you're going to show a lot of cards. And the vice versa is true as well. Jair Marufo doesn't call a lot of fouls. He's generally one of the lowest referees in terms of fouls called per match. He will call things when they need to be called, though. Now, how it affects the game tonight is a lot of light contact is not going to be called. That opens up Miami being aggressive and playing very aggressively. But to say that it means that they won't be carded for persistent infringement, that's incorrect. He's a great referee in terms of the way he manages games. People get frustrated when he doesn't call small fouls. I'm okay with that, as long as the line's consistent. I have no problem with not calling a bunch of little fouls. That's the same with me.
Just be consistent. Whoever you are, I'm not, outside of Marufo, I'm just saying just be consistent. That's my number one thing.
I know, but your criticism was persistent infringement, and it's not the same thing. Just because somebody blows the whistle a lot doesn't mean they use cards effectively. And we've seen that plenty of times, where it'll be 21 fouls on a team and 3 yellows, and one of them had nothing to do with persistent infringement. Marufo has different levels here. So he might not call 7 nothing fouls on Julian Carranza, for example, up top. But if Julian Carranza commits 2 fouls that Marufo calls, he might go yellow. He's consistent in the way he manages a game. That's what's needed in a day like this against a team that will be aggressive. You're not going to get the little niggling nothing fouls. You're not going to get those today because Marufo's not going to want to go there. He's going to want to let the game have a flow. But that doesn't mean he's not going to throw cards. There's a lot of, when we talk about referees, I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there. And that's why I wanted to ask you, and that's why I wanted to get into it, because just calling fouls doesn't make you a good referee. Not calling fouls doesn't make you a bad referee. Not throwing a bunch of cards doesn't make you a bad referee. Like, it's no game is the same. And it's how you manage what's in front of you. And I think Jair Marufo, with what he's done in MLS, with what he's done at the FIFA level as well, he manages games really, really well. So don't plant the seeds that he doesn't call a lot of fouls, and that means Miami's going to have an advantage, and it means they're not going to be carded when they need to. That's not true.
Do we go ahead and let folks know what's going on, especially Chris Ashley, since he's going to be listening later?
Well, I mean, I love Chris, but there are more people that listen than Chris Ashley. It's accurate. Leeds has taken an early lead on Fulham. It's on the Peacock service, which I'm assuming Chris will be watching later. So, Chris, I'm sure you probably got a sense from what John said that you might have needed to skip ahead or mute or whatever. Sorry, bro. I got nothing. That's where we're at. So, Leeds gets a goal. Everton scored a whole bunch of them this morning. Bayern is still scoring goals. Did you enjoy the game yesterday in the Bundesliga?
No.
Why didn't you?
I don't know. It seemed Rocky IV-ish to me.
Rocky IV-ish?
It's just you get to that point where Drago is just sitting there and he's beating Apollo Creed, and you want Duke to. You hear Duke just throw the damn towel.
Can't
That's
do that.
What
though.
I was getting to.
Yeah.
I know, but it's like I know, and this falls completely on the opponent for not stopping Bayern. I get it, but there just gets to a point where it just becomes painful.
It's not fun. Bayern's a machine right now, and they're a brilliant team, but it's not fun to watch teams lose 8, giving up 8. I mean, jeez, it's just it's no fun. Schalke has also got a ton of problems. I mean, let's be real, as Badger Mom points out. They have issues in terms of the finances, in terms of what they've had to give up. I mean, Weston McKennie's over at Juve on loan because they just had to get something for him quickly. It's a mess. I want to see how the season goes, but Bayern just looks like an absolute machine at the moment. D. Graham talking about tonight. Meza gets 60 minutes, whether that's along the back line or the 6 is up to Glassy. I want to make something clear here. We haven't seen him at the 6 in Atlanta. I like the idea. He played it in Mexico. He's played it in his career. He hasn't played it a whole lot. He's a center back. But he's played it recently, as in last season. So it is an option. It might not be an option that Atlanta United's considering, and that's completely and utterly fine because he is primarily a center back. But it just could give you another way to look at it. Don't know how he's feeling. The 6 is going to be a little more physically demanding. So if you're worried about that with him, but you want to get him on the field, then he won't play it. It's a wild card to see him as a 6. It's not an expected thing. Sometimes things take on a life of their own, and maybe that one has as well. It's not expected. I think it could give you a different look that could be pretty effective here. LAFC last night. Gave up 2 penalties early. Dejan Jakovic, I don't know if he was trying out for volleyball and wanted to be slick about it. I mean, it was ugly and dumb. And Latif Blessing then did something dumber and just ran through the back of somebody.
Yeah.
For all the talk, and it's a lot of talk, and it's not just in Atlanta, about Atlanta, and it's all horrible, and everything's bad, and they've lost their way, and blah, 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 blah. Where is that talk about LAFC?
Yeah.
Atlanta's not losing games 3-0 on a regular basis. LAFC is. What? And yeah, they're missing Carlos Vela. Yeah, Joseph Martinez. They were missing Edward Atuesta. I mean, can we go down the injury list? I mean, it is what it is. It's bad, and it when it gets bad for LAFC, they look, in my opinion, far worse than Atlanta's looked at times. And I know this is not the most fun comparison of which team looks worse, two heavyweights in the league, but it's scarier for LAFC, in my opinion, because I don't think you have solutions. There's a couple issues. I mean, Vela, obviously. Diamande leaving and Bradley Wright Phillips becoming a starter rather than a rotation guy is another. All the hype about BWP, well, you've been shut out 3 times in the last 4. Goalkeeper, they've still never answered, and maybe they thought they did when they moved on from Tyler Miller. No, the guy that they signed can't even keep the job. And they haven't replaced Walker Zimmerman. And that's the biggest, most glaring one to me, is you feel like you got a lot for him. And people say consistently that Nashville overpaid for Walker Zimmerman. I disagree. But you got a lot if you're LAFC. That's fine. It's September 19th. You traded him before your first game in late February. And you have not replaced him yet. And I haven't heard any talk of them replacing him. And Dejan Jakovic is not the answer. Latif Blessing playing right back is not the answer. Tristan Blackman is not the answer. Steven Beitashour just signed with the Colorado Rapids. You didn't sign him. You didn't bring him back. You could have played Blackman centrally. It would have been better than Jakovic. It would have been better than Blessing at right back. None of those are the answers. You have to go get a center back. That team can't win the title without a center back. It's impossible. With or without Carlos Vela. So LAFC, in my opinion, feels far more broken. Now, Rope says, to be fair, Atlanta isn't playing Seattle. True. That's accurate. Miami and Nashville are far better than people give them credit for, just because they're expansion teams. LAFC was a really good expansion team. Atlanta was a really good expansion team. It can happen. But they're getting blitzed on a regular basis. And when they go down, I think it looks worse to me, because I'm not seeing any responses. And I know people think that Atlanta's not responding when they fall behind. I would very much disagree with you. Atlanta's fighting. Atlanta's making individual mistakes that are killing them, and set pieces are killing them. LAFC, in general, last night you had a couple of individual mistakes that gave up penalties, but in general, LAFC is just getting pulled apart to me. It's a different conversation. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, it's not good for the league with both of them not playing well. I mean, it is which one is worse? That's not a fun convo, but no. LAFC is not getting as much criticism as I feel like they are worthy of right now. And a lot of it is the roster. For all the talk about Atlanta's roster not being good, I'll take Atlanta's roster without the injuries, though the injuries out for both teams. I'll take Atlanta's roster over LAFC's roster right now any day. Any day. You can at me if you want. It's all good. Take it any day.
You look at goalkeeper, and Bob Bradley can't seem to figure out if he wants Cisniega in, if he wants Vermeer. He's looking for the hot hand, and you keep...
No. It's not about he can't decide or he's looking for a hot hand. Neither one has won the job. It's not even about him rotating. It's neither one's good. And Tyler Miller made big mistakes, but Tyler Miller at least kept the job. You bring in Vermeer, and he can't keep the job. So why'd you pay for him? You've had Cisniega. You didn't think he was the guy. Now you've turned back to him. You don't have a goalkeeper you can count on. And you're missing a center back you can count on. You're not winning things with that. You're not. There's no way.
And then your depth on your 18 or your 23 on any given day. I mean, when you want to pull BWP or Rodriguez or Rossi out, then you're looking at Adrian Perez, Christian Torres, and Danny Musovski. That does not talk to me as any kind of an impact substitution. I mean, you mentioned Dio and you mentioned the Vela injury, but you look at the rest of that bench. That doesn't sit there and say instant impact to me when they come into a lineup. With last night, I mean, you still have Jordan Harvey on your bench. That he would have been a possible substitution option. But once again, you're older at the back. You haven't brought anybody in to help with that age factor that's there.
You're older at one spot at center back. You got younger at left back. Palacios is your left back instead of Harvey. So it balances out. It's not age. It's the fact that Dejan Jakovic or Danilo Silva are nowhere near Walker Zimmerman in terms of quality. Not even close. Jakovic was a starter in this league about 10 years ago. It's a long time. He was in the NASL with the Cosmos not that long ago. No, he's not a starter. He can give you some minutes off the bench as a vet, but he's not a starter. It shows. Go back and look at the goals they've conceded this year. There's so many that have come with him involved. Palacios was a good get. Now, replacing Harvey with Palacios, that's a good move. You got a guy that was linked to Barcelona at one point. I'm not going to hate on that one. It's the center back move without a corresponding replacement, and that's bad planning. Maybe you didn't expect the Zimmerman deal to come about the way it did and how fast it did, but look at how Atlanta is, because it's not done yet, is bouncing back from the Pity Martinez sale that came about very fast and was one you couldn't turn down. They're going to bring somebody in within a month or so, it looks like. And again, February, September, it's been a long time. They haven't replaced that. And I don't know if they feel like they have it, but you mentioned the point about depth. That's been their issue from day one. They have opted for a very strong 11, maybe 12, 13, depending on how you look at it. And that gets them in trouble at times. And it's shown. They have no impact off the bench. BWP would have been that. He has to start now because of Diamande, so you got to replace that. The kids that you brought in that you thought maybe could develop into those impact options off the bench haven't. So, and then Janela, and I thought it was a valid point on the broadcast last night, he started the first half, and he was a highly touted addition. Youth International didn't really give you anything. So, it's not easy to do what Atlanta and LAFC have done. And what Atlanta's done is more impressive than what LAFC has done, in my opinion, because they won MLS Cup. And they won an Open Cup. LAFC is in year 3 now, and they're having the issues that Atlanta is. Now, Chara's got a good point here. Got to say that the LAFC fan base has been handling their downturn pretty well. I'm not as plugged into that fan base, so I can't say for sure, but I have not seen maybe some of the burn it all down kind of mentality from the LAFC fan base.
Yeah,
they understand the issues they're dealing with Vela. I am starting to see more questions about defense and about the roster and about goalkeeper. I think goalkeeper has been an ongoing question, but that center back issue, that's the one. I'm glad to see people starting to talk about it, because I feel like when that was announced, we were live, and I immediately was like, they're in trouble. Mm-hmm. I thought they were in trouble in CONCACAF, and they ended up getting out of the round they were in. Now, they haven't even started their quarterfinal series, and we'll see if that ever continues. But they had a great win in CONCACAF at the beginning of the season to advance. But when they make that sale, it's a weird signal to what's important for the club. And the fact that they haven't replaced him is really troubling for me. So we'll see. I haven't heard any rumors, so I don't know if they have somebody in the pipeline or not. But they're not going to win with what they have. It's just not going to happen. Walchara says, LAFC got to sell these guys now, surely. No chance against the top contenders. Now, that's where you get into a tricky spot, because how does the front office, how does the club really feel about where they are? Diego Rossi has been linked to a lot of moves. Haven't ever heard it get to a close to a deal being done, but he's been talked about a lot. Brian Rodriguez has started to be talked about, and if there's an offer on the table for Brian Rodriguez, you better take it now.
Yeah.
He is not really fit in LA or just in MLS in general. If you've got a way to make your money back on him, I think you can do it now with the offers that are out there. I think Brian Rodriguez is a very talented player. Obviously, he keeps getting called into the Uruguayan national team, so he's not a bum. Let's not be silly here. But he hasn't been the guy. Now, I think the idea was he would be the guy when Diego Rossi was sold, and that's the one I'm a little confused by. Maybe the numbers haven't ever gotten to where they want. Maybe Rossi hasn't liked the clubs that have been making offers. I don't know. I don't know where it's falling apart, but I'm surprised that Rossi's still there. Beyond that, Atuesta would be the other one that is starting to get interest. Now, he's had injury, so he's got to get healthy and play a little bit, I think, to get the offer you want. I don't know if it's going to come in this window. Do they blow it up and start again? And when I say blow it up, this is not like American sports where that means you're going to be bad for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Do they sell Rossi? Do they sell Atuesta? Do they sell Rodriguez? And do they replace them with 3? And do they go finally replace the center back and go get a goalkeeper? It's 5 guys. It's a lot. But you're going to have a lot of spots to work with, a lot of money to work with if you do that correctly. You can do that in an offseason. No problem. You can make those moves in an offseason. You could potentially make 1 or 2 of them now if you want to in this window. So we'll see. The way they are currently constructed, they are not a title-winning team. I don't think they're good enough defensively at all. It's just not even close. 3-0 losses in the last 4 games. It's just not there. You can't outscore everybody all the time. And without Vela, you're not outscoring a whole lot of teams. You will outscore some, and we've seen it. But that doesn't paper over the 3-0 losses. And the losses where they're just getting played off the park. It doesn't. Let's see here. Wowchara says, did anyone see the Atlanta United Twitter handle call out for True 17s? Very interesting. I think they were backing what their player said. Franco Escobar was very clear in how he felt, both with a tweet early in the week and his media availability. Yeah, I mean, they're asking for people to stick with them. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think it's any kind of a shot. It's how clubs operate. I mean, it's the same type of messaging that you get from clubs around the world. It's maybe a little bit different in the U.S. because you don't see, like in Atlanta Hawks, with that kind of messaging. You don't see American pro sports teams with that kind of, stick with us, it's going to be okay, true fans, etc. Not often anyway. I mean, I guess it pops up occasionally, but, that's the feeling you get with soccer clubs. And I think that's what they're playing off of. More than anything, they're playing off of what Franco Escobar said, which I agreed with. I didn't have a problem with what he said. What do you think?
No, I'm with you. I completely and totally agreed with what Franco Escobar said. And, when you have a team that makes that kind of a call, you're backing your player. I'm completely with this 100% all the way through. Zero issues with it whatsoever.
Yeah. Jason Nix asked how long Vela is supposed to be out. I don't know. I thought we might hear an update on him by now, and we haven't. Or at least I haven't seen one.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much longer he's supposed to be out. It wasn't supposed to be a major injury when it happened. At least that's what was said. But it was a knee, so that can be tricky. I don't know. I really don't know. I have not seen an update. I haven't seen any follow-up on that.
I think initially when the injury was announced, I remember seeing a 4 to 6 week thing, but that was the last time I saw any number that was attached to anything attached to a Carlos Vela injury. Was that initial thought?
Weeks back yet. So update from, I think the media is from the media availability. Bradley said ahead of yesterday's game, he's weeks away. Okay. Doing a little bit of light work on the field, not with the team, working with the physical therapist. It's an MCL injury. Bradley said it's tricky to give a timeline because even when you're doing all the work, that feeling of instability in the knee, depending on how severe the tear was, it just all takes time. He's still certainly weeks away because at the moment it's just individual work. So that was August 22nd when the injury happened. The 6 weeks could be valid. It looks like it's going to be longer than 6. They did get Atuesta back, at least in the second half last night. So that's going to help them. But missing Vela and with that defense the way it is, they're still going to struggle. D. Graham with a good point, talking about LAFC and offers and selling when the time's right. He said Houston totally blew it on Ellis, only getting a reportedly $1 million, I think a little bit less, because they held on to him too long. He's out of contract at the end of the year, too, so they had to get something now or he's walking on a free. The little bit they get, I mean, once it got to that point, I guess you're trying to find some kind of a win in getting something out of him. But they should have sold him last year. They should have sold him in the winter this year at the latest. Managing that process is something MLS teams as a whole have to get better at. Because if you feel like, Albert Ellis, very important player for Houston. You'd like to keep him. He doesn't want to stay. Okay. You have to make the decision. And this is something, look, Atlanta United got crushed by people on Julian Gressel with this situation. He's the most high profile that's similar to this. Julian Gressel wanted more money. Atlanta had a number that I'm guessing they didn't want to go over. In Houston's case with Ellis, he didn't want to stay. It wasn't about he wanted more money to stay. Reportedly, and this is going a while back, they had offered him the largest contract in Dynamo history. He didn't want it. So he wanted to leave. Both situations, you have to come to a conclusion at some point in the process where you can still get good value that we can't keep them. We have to get something for them now. Atlanta did that. They made the decision after trying, and it sounded like offers were made even at the beginning of the calendar year. Offers were made. Not accepted. Okay, you got to move on. You got to go make the trade. You got to go make the deal you can get what you can. So Atlanta did that for Gressel. Houston had until the end of really the early window, but to be honest with the way he wanted to go to Europe, they had until the end of January to make a deal and get what they could for him. And they didn't do it. And you just have to know at that point, like, look, this is our last chance. We're going to get the best deal we can in this window. No way around it. And if that best deal is less than we maybe thought it would be, so, sorry, you got to take it. I would assume in January there was less than $1 million on the table for them. I would assume there was at least a $2 or $3 million offer for them. And it sounds like, what's the real difference between that much? It is. Maybe you would have gotten allocation money out of the transfer if you had gotten 3. I don't know the particulars with Ellis and transfer fee they paid and all that kind of stuff off the top of my head. But the more money you can bring in, the higher bar it sets in general. By then keeping him past that window, you knew you were screwed. You were stuck. And now you've made it even worse because it's not like you kept him for the season and he helps you into the playoffs and maybe wins MLS Cup and then leaves on a free afterwards. No, now you've got to move him in the middle of your season and take very little for him, and it's going to hurt you this season because now you don't have time to really bring in a good replacement. You've set everything back by not doing it at the end of the January window. If you had done it then and gotten 2.5, you would have been in a better position. You would have been a window ahead. Now you've kind of screwed up the season. Tab Ramos has a lot of work to do. Maybe he can find a way to solve it with what he has. We'll see. But you got to sell at the right time. And there's got to be that deadline date. There's got to be that going into the last year of the contract, the last year that you can get value. You've got to have that deadline flashing, that alarm in front of you every day. This is it. We've got to move him now to get maximum value. If we don't, we're going to keep him, and we're going to get everything we can out of him on the field for us. But they went like halfway, and it's pointless. Pointless.
Initially for Ellis, he first spent the season-long loan. Then they signed him to a full deal. Reports had the Dynamo paid a $2.5 million fee for Albert Ellis, and then they gave him the 3-year contract when they signed him back in 2017.
Yeah, and maybe they were just saying, you know what, we're going to make sure we get our money back. But you come to the point where you have to get the best deal you can get. And it's the same as Atlanta had the conversation with Julian Gressel. Once you know they're not signing a new contract to stay with us, once you know that, you got to make a deal. Now, you don't have to do it the next day. You got to make it in that window. You can't let them get to less than a year on their contract with you because then you have no leverage. You have to make the best deal you can when it's obvious they're not going to stay. Tottenham screwed this up, too, last year. And we saw the effect it had on the squad where you had so many players that were going into the last year of their contract. The Champions League final run created a hangover in a lot of ways that they didn't recover from. And it had a hangover effect on the front office because to not get those deals done, to have the Christian Eriksen thing hanging over your head for as long as it did. Now, you pulled that one off, and you got something for him, which was pretty incredible as a rescue mission in that. But who else did you lost Vertonghen for nothing? You had these issues with the squad, like these guys wanted to sign new deals. They weren't getting the offers they wanted. It was just distracting for the first half of the year, and you were bad. You can't go into the last year of the contract with key players and not make a move. You just can't. It's how the business works. If you do it, you're going to hurt yourself. You're going to hurt the player. You're going to hurt your bottom line. So I was blown away because we've been talking about Elise and transfers for 2 years now, and I'm surprised that it came down the way that it did, and this is all they got. They could have done so much better.
Yep. Antonio is in with a couple of different thoughts this morning on the Twitter, and he says for an Atlanta United conversation, he says, I know there's some angst about bringing in Moreno before the manager, but it seems like his style, from what I've read, would fit most possession or attacking teams. What do you think?
Yeah. You have a style. You have a type of player profile that you're looking for, and that's not going to change with the new manager. Now, how the new manager uses him could change. Absolutely. He could play out wide. He could play as a 10. He could play as a second forward. He could play as an 8. That's different. You're not going to say, I'm not going to recruit him. Like, he fits the way you want to play. He fits it. There's no question. So if he's available and it's a good price and you feel like it is because, one, that price has gone down since COVID-19. He's coming off of a great year. He's coming from a club that you've had success with in the past in terms of players being prepared for this level. He's coming from, not just you. I mean, a lot of players have come from Lanús and come to MLS and been successful. So you make the deal. You wouldn't not make the deal with a new manager. That's the thing here, and that's what people have to understand. The new manager would not veto the deal. That's where I think people are getting off track with this whole thing. You have to have the new manager first. If this player came to the table with any manager in place, they're not vetoing it. They can't veto it. And no, you wouldn't say no to this move for this amount of money with what he can do for this team. No, you wouldn't say no to it. So nothing changes with the players you're recruiting with a new manager. They might have some connections. They might have some personal favorites. They might look at the squad and say, well, I need a left winger. I need this. But when you can get a player of Moreno's ability for this type of price, you take it. And he'll fit with anybody. So, no, it wouldn't change with a manager in place to me.
Chris Hutchison, when it comes to Atlanta United this morning, he says, I'd like to see them at least look organized. My expectations for this year are pretty basic at this point.
Well, I think maybe this whole idea about expectations, and I've seen people say, like, I'm not expecting any wins. I'm just looking at players the rest of the way. That's not really fair. It's steps. I mean, it's a process. Right now, you're building off of a bad run of games where you were on the road 3 times in a week and you did not play well. So how do you get back to playing well? Organization is one. It's not as simple as that for me. I'm looking at set piece organization and I'm looking at transition play being quick on both sides, transitioning to defense, transitioning to offense. So those are the things in terms of organization that I'm looking for here. But I'm looking for building blocks because you're not going to turn from the loss of Nashville to the best team in the league in a week. It's not going to happen. But you can take the steps that can get you there in 2.5, 3 months, and it starts here. You start to play in a more organized fashion. You eliminate the bad goals you're giving up. You start to transition to the attack quicker. These are things that you can start to do now and start to build those building blocks to be better later. That's what I'm looking for today in a winnable game. And I'm not into the whole must-win thing with 12 games left. It's the way this playoffs are going to go, the way this year is going to go. There's so many unknowns. It's not about must-win. This is a winnable game. This is at home. You need to be in a position to win this game. That's where Atlanta United has to be. It has to be a better overall performance and more organized in the ways that we just talked about.
And Chris also says he's also looking for incremental improvement for the balance of the schedule.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, I think the idea is like, this team can't win, they're not any good. That's all nonsense to me. It's 100% nonsense. And just like we've talked about with the whole LAFC thing, I don't think LAFC people and fans are thinking that. And people will say, well, they had this win, or well, they did this, and absolutely true. But LAFC feels farther away from being a team that can win a title, in my mind, than Atlanta United. And yes, I'm biased, and I understand, and people will think that that's a crazy thing to say. I feel like Atlanta is closer because of the types of goals they're conceding. So many from set pieces. That is correctable. Set piece defending is a correctable thing. Getting the players in that you want to get in. Now, you've got to get Jurgen Damm's hamstring solved. You've got to get Kubo Torres producing. That's a big element to this. Or Adam John producing. One of them has to produce something up top. If Moreno's the guy, and by all accounts he is, get him in as quickly as you can and get him playing games as quickly as you can. Those things are going to help you. You've got to have those things happen along the way. But this is a team, in my opinion, that can't compete and can't compete to get to an MLS Cup. They've got to start taking those steps now because they have not been competing at a championship level or anywhere close for the last few weeks.
And and if I put the LAFC roster next to the Atlanta United roster, which one would I prefer? The Atlanta United roster.
In a season like this, I would, because you need depth. You're going to have depth. And I think when LAFC has to go to player 15 on the squad, it's a problem. And I don't think that's a problem for Atlanta. So we'll see. Neither one looks like a title contender at the moment. And I just think Atlanta, with some of the pieces they have in place and some of the moves that we're waiting to see come good, like Dom and Torres and Moreno to get here, it feels like they're heading in the right direction and giving a group that can win. LAFC, I just don't know what the steps are to get them to where they can win.
Daniel Price, in referencing our LAFC in the 32-52 discussion, he says, I'm sure there is burn it all down in LA. It's everywhere.
I don't know. I haven't seen it. I mean,
yeah,
maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a guess. I don't know what to say to that.
Yeah. But no, just Daniel looking at one fan base and thinking that
no. It's a guess. It's a guess, John. It's a guess. Yeah. It's a guess. I'm not throwing shade at Daniel. I mean, it's not like that. It's a guess. I don't know if it is or not. I haven't seen it. Yeah. People have commented on Atlanta's fan base from outside of Atlanta. I've not seen comments about LAFC's fan base falling apart right now. So, I mean, I don't have anything to back that up.
Yeah.
Leeds had a penalty go against them that I thought was incredibly harsh. They just got a penalty that was accurate. Not a makeup call, but it's one of those where maybe the eyes are a little bit stronger on the 18 after what was a pretty bad penalty to call, in my opinion. We'll see if Leeds can take the lead. Chris Ashley's like, what? Spoiler alert. Sorry, dude.
Yes.
That's what happens, man, when you go out coaching and stuff.
What did you think of the Slaven Bilic and the Kieran Gibbs Reds this morning for West Brom?
Stupid, childish, immature, all of the above. The Gibbs one's an embarrassment, just a total embarrassment. You don't put your hands at somebody's face. Unless it's in MLS and it's Nicolas Figal, and then you can throw elbows and forearms into people's face and actually throw it into their head and knock them down. Just saying. In this case, Gibbs, puts his hand to Hamas's face, which you can't do, and he gets a red card. MLS, maybe he would have gotten on the team of the week. I don't know. Maybe the disciplinary committee would have voted for him to be on team of the week. Just guessing, without Figal getting suspended. And I'm not going to let that drop because it's an embarrassment from the disciplinary committee. And anytime I see a red card in anything with hands to the face, we watched it. He threw the arm into Gallagher's head. And if he had connected with the elbow, it doesn't make it different than if he connected with the forearm. Sabiga blew it, got that call wrong. The VAR either didn't convince him well enough or Sabiga overruled it, and we don't know because, I guess the amount of games they've had lately kind of helps because they haven't produced anything to explain this one. Mm-hmm. And the disciplinary committee, while they want to look for more trifling things to go back and give retroactive suspensions. They don't for something like this that, in my opinion, affects player safety. Because the next time a player throws an elbow at somebody's head and gets suspended, they should argue, well, this is what happened here. Why was this not a suspension? Why am I getting suspended? It's a bad precedent to set. And when you're on a disciplinary committee, you have to think about precedent more than anything. Very disappointed. So Gibbs did something stupid and got red carded, as he should have. I don't know what Slaven Bilic was arguing about, but he was told to go away, and he kept going, and he got sent off. Yeah. I thought the conversation at halftime from the studio was maybe a little too lenient for Bilic. I mean, you could have given him a yellow there. He didn't go away after you showed him a red, so I don't know if giving him a yellow would have got him to walk away. I would have probably went there first, and if he said anything else, give him a second yellow and send him. That would have made it look a little cleaner, but he was looking to get sent off, and he got sent off.
I mean, Mike Dean said, away, away, away. Bilic kept going and going and going, and he got the card. So.
He would have backed. I think Dean would have backed himself up a little bit better, and Thad Dooley says he gives out reds like they're candy. The Gibbs one was a red. No question on that one. The one to Bilic, he could have done it in a cleaner way, given a yellow, because he said away, away, away. Bilic didn't go away. He could have given the yellow and said, that's it, no more, anything else, and it's a second yellow. And then if Bilic opened his mouth, boom, hit him with the second, and you're gone. That would have looked better. The straight red looked a little quick, but I don't have a problem with it because Bilic wasn't going away. I don't know if he would have with a yellow.
Chris Ashley, he says, while I'm here and y'all are still going, was listening to the Poch y'all on the run-up from last night and wondered if Poch waits it out and goes to Leeds next year if Bielsa decides to transition out. Would definitely be a great transition.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It would be. Pochettino is a little different than Bielsa. He's more pragmatic. I think anybody coming off of the Bielsa side of things is going to be more pragmatic than Marcelo. So maybe that's what you need, because the thing is, if you are Leeds, and you have to expect that Bielsa's not going to stay more than 2 more years. Even if he stays 1 more year after this year, I'd be a little surprised. You don't want to move in a completely different direction. You want to stay in the same vein, but you've got to have a tweak, because it is a grinding, both mentally and physically, style. You've got to have a tweak. Poch would be a good tweak to that. Is he still going to be available? Don't know. Would he fit from a price perspective? Probably, because, I mean, Bielsa's getting paid well. Now, the thing about Marcelo Bielsa, and people have always gotten into this when it comes up, like the way he negotiates and the way how his contracts go. I mean, like, I don't think he signed a contract for this year until a few days before the first game.
Yeah.
He wants to be paid the way that he should be paid. He knows that he is a top manager, and he needs to be paid like a top manager. And that's great. But he gives so much of his money away. He takes care of a lot of things with his staff. He has his army of scouts all over the world that he sends money to them. He wants to be paid the way he should be paid, but he's not getting rich off of it. It is what he uses to continue to be who he is, and to have a group that's very loyal to him and works with him. So he's being paid very well. Pochettino would have to be paid very well. We know this. So it's not crazy to say, like, oh, he'd be too expensive. No, I don't think so. He would be a very interesting fit. And there is that emotional pull when it comes to a guy like Bielsa for Pochettino. I mean, if you haven't heard the story, like, what Bielsa did when he took over at Newell's was him and Jorge Griffa, who, by the way, was the person who advocated and lobbied for Ezequiel Barco to be signed by Independiente. Griffa is a legend in Argentina. I mean, you're going from, pre-Batistuta days. He played for Atletico back in the day in Spain. One of the most renowned talent scouts in the world. Identified everybody. And Barco is maybe one of his last, legendary finds. So Grifa and Bielsa in the early 90s or late 80s basically said, we don't have enough talent here in Rosario with Newell's to be a top team. We don't have the money to spend like a Boca or a River. So we've got to go find talent. So he drove his Fiat all over Argentina, and he would have these little tournaments and identify players and bring them in on trial. And he had heard about, after doing a tournament out near where Pochettino was, he had heard about Pochettino. He didn't come to the event. So he's driving back and goes through the town that Pochettino lived in and ends up at his house at like 1:30 in the morning and goes to the door because Bielsa is a loco and like talks to the parents, and the parents are all like, what in the world? And then they're like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And he wanted to see Pochettino. Pochettino was sleeping. Like, he didn't know this happened until his dad told him the next day. And then they wanted to look at his legs. And he said, oh, he's got the legs of a footballer. And eventually they brought him in. Now, that's a lot of romanticism behind it. Pochettino was doing stuff with Rosario Central in their academy. That's Newell's arch rival. Bielsa knew that. He knows everything. So he knew this was for show to a degree, but he knew what kind of a player he wanted to get. He brings him in. Bielsa challenged those players at Newell's to think like coaches. He asked them to do like game plans and reviews of matches and all kinds of things. So you've seen so many of them. Tata, Pochettino, so many have went on to coach. There is, as Pochettino said, he's like a second dad. So if some massive offer doesn't materialize this year and Pochettino's available and Bielsa decides not to come back, that makes all the sense in the world. Because it's a big club that can pay Pochettino the way he wants to be paid. He would be able to continue his mentor's legacy. He would be in a club that is seen as a project in a lot of ways, and that's what Pochettino likes. I don't think he would go to a Real Madrid because it wouldn't be as exciting for him. So, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I had not thought of it. I hadn't heard anything like that. I love the idea, and If Leeds and Bielsa and Pochettino really want to be smart about all this, start talking about it now.
Yeah, it's your plan of succession.
Get it in place. I mean, and the question's going to come from, when does Bielsa want to go? And that's hard for him, I think, to know. He left Newell's because he felt like he didn't have anything else to give. Leeds has taken really good care of him. He's not going to leave in a bad way. I think he's going to want to leave in the right way. Being replaced by a Pochettino would be a great, great fit for him. But we'll see how the season goes, and we'll see how things go. That makes a lot of sense. It really does, and it would be appealing to Pochettino, I think, from a personal level, to go and follow Bielsa and build upon what the platform he's created.
And Antino's also catching up from the show last night, and he says, I think Jose used a different word on what his guys need to be.
Well, no, he did say they needed to be bastards. Like that's absolutely true. He's used other words, too. He's said a lot of things that haven't been bleeped. He said some things that have been bleeped, which is really impressive. I don't know where the line is on the bleeping. But
so the chicken word you bleep, but everything else you let go.
We think it's the chicken word. We don't know if it's necessarily the chicken word. He found something that got bleeped, and he said plenty of other things. So you got to be a little nasty. And Atlanta United's had this before. I mean, when they were scoring a whole ton of goals, you had guys that would kick somebody when they needed to be kicked. Remember Jesse Marsh complaining about it, saying Tata Martino was saying from the bench, kick this guy, kick this guy. No, he was saying to foul somebody in transition. They've lost that a little bit. And they do need to get that back. You've got a lot of really nice technical players. Need a little bit of nasty at times. And that's okay. Miguel Almiron was a guy who gave you that, and you wouldn't think of him as nasty, but go back and look at some of the fouls Miguel Almiron created, or did. Look at some of the plays that he made. Look at how angry he would get from time to time.
Yeah, he wasn't afraid to stand up to David Villa the one game at Bobby Dodd when they were woofing at each other. He wasn't backing down from anybody.
Nobody's backing down from David Villa, John. David Villa is not imposing. I'm talking about like Nicolas Figal as a different conversation. David Villa is not going to throw an elbow into your mouth. Nicholas Figal will, because we've seen it. So
Yes,
who's going to stand up to that? Who's going to, maybe if you can find a time to do it, and probably the best time is just going to be to get stuck in on a tackle, because with VAR, it's hard to get that revenge shot. Is somebody going to get stuck into a tackle on him when the opportunity presents itself? I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised if Adam John just, oops, I kind of ran through you there, my bad. We'll see what happens.
Penalty for Leeds in the 41st. At the break, they now lead Fulham 2-1.
Yeah, that's about right. Leeds has been the better team so far, but Fulham's hanging around. You got to give Fulham some credit here. I thought this might go the other way quicker than this, but Leeds has been the better team. It's a push in the back. It's a penalty. I don't think was a penalty the other way. I mean, he goes to ground. Anytime you do that, you're inviting risk. He kept his foot back. I thought the Fulham player had lost the ball and was looking for some kind of bailout and got it. I wouldn't have called that. The one for Leeds, absolutely would have called. Easy.
Let's see. Tafka's in this morning, and he says, so our best young striker in the USMNT pool isn't playing as a striker? ?
Do you have any context to this?
No, I do not. Tafka, I need details so I can add more to your question.
I'm guessing he's thinking about Josh Sargent, but I am not watching Werder Bremen, so I don't know where he's playing. I don't know if he's the best young striker in the pool, to be perfectly honest. A lot of hype. He's still very young. He is not. You're not ruling him out of anything, but there's other players I might play ahead of him. Part of it is he's at a bad club, and he hasn't stayed on the field consistently. So the development's been a little bit slow. But no, I'm not necessarily saying he's the best overall. And where is he playing? Because if he's playing out wide as opposed to playing as a number 9, that's not a big deal. That can be a tactical thing. If he's playing as a defensive midfielder, we're having a different conversation. I'm going to assume he's not. Don't get worked up if he's playing out wide in a 4-3-3 or something. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, we saw a little bit of it with the twos, and it was very intentional, and it was something they had obviously worked on with Jackson Conway and Philip Goodrum drifting out wide and creating space almost in a false 9 scenario for Amir Bashti when Atlanta was building up play. Rope says, is it me or does it sound like Tim Howard is sporting a little English accent? He's always had it. He spent so much time there, it kind of gets stuck inside. Like, I think John Harkes has finally eliminated his little English accent because he's been back here for so long. But when he came back in the early days of MLS, it was strong with him.
Kind of like Madonna and Johnny Depp when they did theirs?
No, because they didn't spend years and years and years in England. They were putting on a fake accent to be a fake accent. John Harkes lived in England for 4 or 5 years. He wasn't faking it. Why are you insulting John Harkes that way?
No, I'm not insulting. It's like
Greenville Triumph Weekly. Did you just hear this?
Yeah, really.
You're insulting him. You said it's like Madonna.
When you're in a part of the world, or it doesn't matter if it's in the southern part of the U.S. or if it's in England, it goes in your head, and subconsciously it triggers when you want to talk to folks. And so I completely understand where that comes up.
Madonna listened to like an Elton John song and started getting a fake accent. That's not the same thing. You live there for a period of time, yeah. So Howard's got a little bit of it. Brad Friedel had it for a while. I think he's probably still got it.
Yes, true.
Brad Gazan had it for a little bit. You hear it a little bit in certain things that get said. I think it's kind of diminished now. It happens. But no, don't compare it to Madonna and Johnny Depp. They didn't spend any real time in England. Madonna, I guess the Guy Ritchie thing, but she had the English accent before that, I think, if I remember it right. Like, she just all of a sudden started speaking with an accent, and it's like...
Started talking with an accent, yeah.
No, it wasn't like that at all.
It was somewhat Liverpudlian. Hertha Berlin's leading Werder Bremen 3-0 in the 68th, by the way.
Well, that's just bad. We got bots in the Twitch pitch. It's good times. We got like 5 minutes. Well, we got probably about 3 minutes.
Do they want us to buy more followers?
Yes, they want you to be famous, John.
Not so much.
Greenville Triumph Weekly might make you famous, though. That's going to be a big question mark.
Oh, speaking of which, they have a game at 12:30, I believe, going up against Chattanooga Red Wolves in 1 versus 2. And 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock at CHI Memorial. Chattanooga and Greenville juice boxes in the composite, courtesy of our friends at Odds Portal. Chattanooga a plus 129, Greenville a plus 185, and your draw is a plus 218.
How does Greenville win? What have you learned from Greenville Triumph Weekly?
They just don't give up. They continue to pound on you. But I think that turf is not a factor, considering that they're at Legacy and CHI Memorial has turf. I think the early start and the travel, that's I think the number one thing is the travel and the early start. So I think that if Greenville can avoid giving up the early goal because of the early start in the first 20 minutes, then I think they'll be okay.
Do we know how they were traveling?
No, I don't.
I mean, bus.
But I imagine it was the night before,
night?
But still that 1 o'clock early start and what have you.
Yeah.
Chris Ashley, how are they traveling?
Well, we're not going to find out because we're almost done. 1 o'clock on ESPN Plus for that. 6 o'clock, 98.9 The Game and radio.com for pregame coverage of Atlanta and Miami. Kickoff will be just after 7. You can listen to the match on ESPN, or not ESPN, sorry. You can watch the match on ESPN Plus if you're outside of the Atlanta area. If you're in the Atlanta area, you can watch on Fox Sports South. Is it South or Southeast? Double check for me.
Efforting.
I don't want to lead people the wrong way. I think it might be Southeast this time around. And then you can listen to the game on 92.9 The Game. You can listen to the game on radio.com app. You can listen to the game on the Atlanta United app. You can listen to the game on Sirius XM-FC this evening. And we'll have the full-time report for an hour after the final whistle.
Southeast.
It is Southeast. So make sure you are tuned to Fox Sports Southeast for the TV coverage. ESPN Plus if you're outside the area. And we have some listeners and viewers from outside the area. And you can listen anywhere you want on radio.com, Sirius XM-FC, the Atlanta United app. So thank you for hanging out with us on a Saturday morning. All kinds of madness going on in the Power Hour. That's what these are going to be with games happening all over the place. We'll try to find out what Josh Sargent was doing this morning. We'll try to see what happens with Leeds the rest of the way. I think people have figured out how to watch on Peacock, so that part's sorted out. I think that's it. Lots of games in MLS, so make sure you got your juice boxes lined up correctly and your fantasy team set up. We'll be back on Monday. Mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata, y'all.